Maybe we're online. Maybe.
One minute.
Excellent. All right. I think we might be okay. Let's see if I can.
That's the big thing. And when it was, and of course, here between the we will take and in attacking the SAM side. So I would assume that this.
All right. Now we can get in there.
10 seconds.
Cool.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back. I think we should be up on YouTube at this point, I think.
There he is.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed, hopefully there. So let me see if I can play a little bit of this. Is just, again, we're not going to be able to give the whole context of this circumstance. But in many ways, I just want listen to the conversation. This is between Kennedy and Eisenhower. Eisenhower's almost the recording was on Kennedy's side. And by the way, please tell me, as a comedian, that after we survived the debacle of the Trump presidency, that everything, all the recordings, all the emails will be preserved for comedy posterity. All right. So, here you go.
Oh, I hope
waiting. I got the leadership coming back at 5 this afternoon. Then we begin this blockade. Then we'll continue the surveillance. I would anticipate 2 or 3 things. First, that Khrushchev will make a statement that any attack upon Cuba will be the same as he made at the time of the Suez business, will be regarded as an attack upon the Soviet Union, be responded to by all the weapons at their command. Number one. Number two is we have to assume that as this surveillance continues with the U-2s, that these SAM sites may shoot one down. At that point, then we were just discussing what action we will take and in attacking the SAM site. So I would assume that this will only be the first of an increasing number of steps. We're not going to be in any position to carry out an invasion for some days because we have to move those troops around from San Diego, but we're going to do all those things, and we'll just stay in touch with you this week, which, as I say, we anticipate that it will be getting more intense. As I understand it, John talked to me about 3 possibilities. Right. The first one, I told him the only thing.
At that point, by the way, it's a little hard to hear Eisenhower, but he basically reiterates 3 of their possibilities, and all of them are sort of part of a natural uptick in tensions that defined those 13 days. For almost 2 weeks, America was on the precipice of total annihilation. And
we were still only at like wax cylinder then?
Right. Well, this is from the recorded audio that's in the Kennedy library. And it was a dictation recorder they were using. So that so that any notes from that had to be disseminated to the Joint Chiefs, to the Department of Defense. So it's
supposed to be kind of disposable.
A little bit. I mean, this was simply so that they could do it and then they could toss it aside after it was written notes. But it was literally it was a 10-minute dictation belt that was meant for giving to a stenographer when you send out letters and whatnot, and they basically hooked it up to the phones. And then that became the norm. It was increasingly becoming normal and led to effectively Nixon recording everything that was in the in the Oval Office on the same kind of concept. was
And that worked out well for him.
Sure, yeah. And by the way, any illusion that anyone has about Trump draining the swamp or shifting away from business as usual, who isn't completely deluded, which a good portion of the people who are supporting him are.
I was so bummed. I've got friends who are like in my convoy circles who are kind of in that ilk.
Yeah.
And they were all woo woo, drain the swamp, and I just kind of shook my head and thought, oh boy.
Do you have any idea?
Wait till they see what he filled the swamp up with.
That's right. Now I will say this: he floated this idea that has been floated on both Democratic in his like this video address he did. I think it was yesterday. That one of the things he wants to put on is a moratorium on lobbying 5 years after you leave, and a lifetime on lobbying for a foreign government. This is something that was, has been floated around by both Democrats and Republicans for a long time. So this is one of those things that will more than likely, the upside of a Trump presidency in many ways will be the fact that while I think there are Democrats that will run full interference on any hardline pro-life Supreme Court judge that he wants to put in, or Giuliani as Secretary of State, which has to be confirmed. They will run hard interference against that stuff. But Trump will not be able to, save face the way he likes to without a certain number of wins. And the only way you guarantee yourself that is by taking something that both sides have agreed on for quite some time, including very possibly him strong-arming the immigration bill that's been languishing in Congress for a long time, that has been hammered out by both sides, would pass under any president if it was put up for a vote in the last 15 years. And yet, because of that very fact and not wanting to give a win, both sides have kind of let it sit there. More so, obviously, Republicans. It was starting to be, it was basically drafted and ready for a vote as Pelosi lost her office. So, but the idea that he may want a big win on the books, and if they can sideline put in something about border security, which is already in there, already handled, already in the standard budget anyways, so it's one of those things he can pat himself on the back for something that was already there, which is one of his favorite things to do. It's very possible that comprehensive immigration reform could actually be passed. Now, the big problem is that requires a certain level of what would effectively be, by his side, be called amnesty. The process that the Obama administration put forward, where everybody, you have to get in line, you pay a fine, you'll pay back taxes. You don't necessarily have to go to your home country and start from scratch, which is an absurdity meant to basically evacuate the country and then lock the doors after they've gone. That was, that's what that get in line in your own country stuff is about. To take families that have been here for 27 years and make them leave and then basically deny them at every hurdle the ability to come back in. That's what that's really about. That is, and that's one of the reasons why it isn't in the comprehensive immigration bill, at least in its current form. And both sides know that that's impossible to get through. It's also doesn't serve their interests. On the Democratic side, it certainly does not serve Hispanic Americans who are basically entrenched in American society and have roots here and have for a very long time, many of whom pay taxes but don't get any of the benefits of those taxes they have paid. That would basically zero them out. They would never see those tax dollars. So that Social Security payment that you've made either under false pretenses or a different piece of documentation would just evaporate effectively. Yeah, which is obviously not going to...
Did you see Rocky Mountain Mike? Rocky Mountain Mike is on fire today in the forums.
No doubt.
He said, how's that swampy, drainy thing going for you?
Oh, yeah. It's an absurdity. Here's the thing. There's an article from Think Progress that draws from a couple of different things, but not the least of which is the fact that making the case that Bush lawyers and Obama administration lawyers have both made the case to the Electoral College that Trump has to sell his businesses before the Electoral College meets, or he is disqualified to be a president. Because of, and this isn't just because it's not a good idea. It's because he would be in violation of Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, which bars office holders from accepting, quote, any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatsoever from any king, prince, or foreign state, meaning that any money that his businesses get across the world, and he has a multinational corporation, would effectively be a constant form of bribery. And so the founding fathers put it in the Constitution in no uncertain form, and if he doesn't do that, it's a direct violation of his oath of office, and therefore is grounds for impeachment from day one. So the Electoral College, if they give him the presidency, and he hasn't done that, would be a violation of their charter. So watch, in modern American society, I think a lot of us, we got to take a break, but when a lot of us would find it shocking if something like that would happen. Like, I don't know, it violates the law, therefore we can't do it, therefore Hillary Clinton is president. Like the explosion of, oh my God, that's never done. Because the business as usual concept has been entrenched since Bush v. Gore.
Yep.
Since Bush v. Gore, it's, for the best of the country, let's not fight any of this.
And then the whole, I believe my facts, not your facts.
That's right. And I'm curious to see the founding fathers crowd, how they feel about Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, in terms of, literally, it's in the first article of the Constitution. It's the very first, look, there's nothing more important than no king, state, or foreign government being able to bribe our leader.
Kind of thing to do.
Right. And currently, Trump, as a president-elect, is incapable of that unless he sells his companies and they go into a blind trust. The idea that his kids can run them and he doesn't have some sort of say, especially when Jared, his son-in-law, may very well run, be a part of his White House. He's trying to change the law so that he can do that too, because you're not supposed to be able to appoint family members. This is going to be an extraordinary turn of events over the next month, especially. But the best thing about it is what I would call the Alex Jones reversal. And we'll talk about that when we come back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. And we will be taking your calls, 773-763-9278. Yeah, Maureen, the curious thing about any kind of let's see, there you go. The curious thing about having a trustee run it, and having it be a blind trust, he doesn't understand why that's a conflict of interest. The man has property in Russia. We're in uncharted territory in that regard. Yeah, we'll talk about the Jill Stein recount as well. Well, the problem becomes, and I just don't know how seriously he understands any of this. Insofar as having his businesses in a trust. I think he thinks it's because of the, well, you got to trust me. It's just, I mean America well, therefore, yeah, it's fine. I'm not one of the bad guys, so just let me run my country and my company. Yeah. Jill Stein's recount, the only thing it will effectively do is re-entrench the illusion that it was votes that were counted that were the problem, not votes that were not allowed that were the problem. Yeah, I'm not a Jill Stein fan, and Jill Stein is has the dirtiness of that WikiLeaks has right now. They're both far too tainted by Russia and far too kind with the Russian government to be taken seriously. Yeah, if you make the point that well, they, all my votes didn't get counted or whatever. Well, you create the illusion that everybody who voted got to vote, and everybody, who did vote, their vote actually made it through the machine.
$20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So the illusion that that Trump has been operating under is that there are certain laws or elements of the presidency or being in office that are based wholly on the opinion of the American people and their idea of the president's trustworthiness, like putting his companies into a blind trust. That the only reason you do that is because we don't want there to be a sense of impropriety. It's not that simple. There are legal reasons why that must be codified in law, so that you don't use the trust of the American people as cover for criminality, graft, corruption, and the like. And the Trump presidency is the test of Article 1, Section 9. It is the test of that meaningfulness. And it very well could be, if the Congress or the Senate is too afraid to move because of half the country that supports Trump and the fear of violence that might come from it, that it may end up in the courts because of this. And even if you put a hardliner, if you, let's say Trump puts somebody in the Supreme Court that must have the founding fathers' ideas in mind when anything comes before their desk, this would be cut and dry. That Trump has to sell all of his companies or put them in a trust, or he is in violation of the Constitution and therefore subject to impeachment. Period. There is and this is, again, looking back at, because of Fidel Castro's death and the normalization of relations with Cuba now that are historic, that the president took against the raging voices of those around him, is I think the contrast that we now live with in terms of the Obama presidency and what will be the Trump presidency is that there is a seriousness involved in the thought process that is sometimes, I think, more sedate and less lofty than what President Obama came into office on. He came in as an orator, essentially, and got to work as a public servant because the skill to do so was there. The concern with the Trump presidency is that the skill to do so is not there, and effectively, he is installing buddies in places where Ben Carson, as the head of housing and urban development, literally is simple. The thought form in Trump's head seems to be he's black and it has the word urban in it. That's the reasoning. Not because of his qualification.
It really is it.
That it is.
And that's why he thinks he can possibly do it.
That's right. Because I mean, it's an absurdity, but it is exactly, you know it. You know that that's what the thought was. Put him, housing and urban development, that really only has to do with black people in inner cities. So let's put Ben in charge of that. And that's
I've been there.
Right. It's maniacal. And effectively, he put a woman in charge of the Department of Education. One, by the way, who's into charter schools and school choice meaning that you get a tax break for religious schooling, which is a big, gimme to the
yeah, she's never taught. She doesn't have a degree in education.
Right. But she is ironically pro Common Core. And so
what?
Yeah.
How?
Because a lot of this stuff, Common Core is a variance of No Child Left Behind, is a variance of every form of federal oversight in local education that has existed. They all have a different name, but the presence is we need nationwide standards because we don't want Alabama, because they want to teach false history, focus less on the kind of education that gets you out of poverty, and effectively just vocationalize people who locally into the same jobs they've always had as those jobs disappear.
Well, now she's saying she's not a supporter of Common Core.
Yeah, she's had to reverse that, but she's been a proponent of it, for as long as she's spoken on the issue. So,
ridiculous.
Yeah, and Maureen in our chat is going, but she's a billionaire, so she must know something about oligarchy. Sure. This is
oligarchy.
Yeah. This is again in many ways it's new territory. In some ways it is a replay of effectively the 20s and 30s, where the robber baron class decided that the unwashed masses needed to be kept away from the reins of power because the ones that are against them are commies and the ones that are for them are idiots. And if left to their own devices, would declare flagrant war anytime they were attacked. And we find ourselves in many ways in a similar situation, in that when the right looks at the left, what they see is communist sympathizers, homosexuals and race traitors, and that honestly. And not just sees them as they exist, they are part of our country, we must understand, they see them as a direct assault on America as they recognize it, as outsiders, as effectively the nationalist equivalent of carpetbaggers, outsiders who somehow magically got here. And I just laughing at something Rocky Mountain Mike said, that was a mistake, that Carson was supposed to be the head of urban contemporary smooth jazz. But I don't think he plays an instrument. If he played an instrument, I would feel better about the whole thing. But they view, both they view the LGBT community, they view black people especially as, if it wasn't for slavery, you'd still be in Africa, and you're lucky we got you here. This is genuinely a conversation on what is viewed as the alt-right, but is really just the children of the moral majority. And and then they view, both the Green Party, Bernie followers, any Democrat who cares about universal health care or unemployment insurance or Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, as communists lying in wait. Understand that whenever these people say we have to get back to what the founders meant, what they really mean is Native Americans were savages and black people were 3/5 of a person, and women couldn't vote, because that was there originally. That stuff, we grew out of that stuff, but they're still mad about it. And it comes out accidentally out of the mouths of Rush Limbaugh occasionally, and it comes out purposely from the voices of people like David Duke and his ilk, who have supported Trump the entire time. And whether you think Trump is a true believer in that stuff and is softening his message, or whether he is catering to those people simply to get their votes, Either one is bad and has the same ramifications from a governmental standpoint. And in terms of, somebody like Rudy Giuliani as Secretary of State, or in terms of, Ben Carson in charge of an organization, he doesn't even know how it runs. What you realize is that Trump views the running of both a company and a government the same way, which is leadership is a multiple choice test. The details of each choice are worked out by your team, by somebody else. And what they bring to you, in the case of how he ran his business, is one of these choices is legal, one of these choices is illegal. And of the illegal choices and the legal choices, there are two variant ones. What you choose is either, if there's it's almost the same decision that Edward Norton's character made in Fight Club. We do the math. If the cost of a recall is more than the cost of paying off dead people and hiding the fault of the car, we don't do a recall. Mm-hmm. No matter how many lives it would save. We do the actuarials. Which company do you work for? A major one. And there's an element of the Trump White House will be run much like the Nixon White House. Look, whatever decision I make is legal because I'm the president. And if there's a legal, likable choice to be made here that solves the issue we're trying to solve, great. If there's an illegal one that has, damage that doesn't concern us, and by us I mean their administration, not the American people, it's illegal, but it benefits us more than, from a political standpoint, more than a negative, and we can get away with it, that wins every time. It's effectively the hubris that led up to the plumbers breaking into the Watergate Hotel. It is exactly what he's thinking in terms of his business. And each of the people he's putting in charge thinks that they're also running a multiple choice test as that from principled leadership, you give me 4 choices, I'll make I'll say what my first choice is. If it's illegal, go with the second choice. And I'm going to take a nap. Wake me when the ramifications start rolling in. This is a heck of a job, Brownie, the government.
Yeah. And
wouldn't it be frightening and hysterical if the Electoral College said, yeah, you can't be president unless you sell your businesses. And he said, my kids are going to run them. And they said, that's not good enough. And so the Electoral College has to go with the national vote, and Hillary Clinton becomes president on December 20th. Becomes president-elect on December 20th, and the riots begin. It's a maddening situation we find ourselves in. And all of it is real. All of it has legal ramifications. All of it is serious work. And there are currently inserious people lining up to run these offices. They are inserious. They do not actually care enough about the government office they will head to make it work or function positively. They're going to eliminate 2 regulations for every new regulation that comes in. Is there a more childish view of how regulations are gauged by importance? And it's, this is like, if I finish my breakfast, can I have 2 pieces of candy? If I finish, if I eat half of it, I get 1 piece of candy. If I get 2, it is the simplistic form to feed that thought.
That's how my wife gets me to eat.
It is, well, that's not true at all, because you're a tall drink of water. She needs no help whatsoever. The extra sugar helps your metabolism stay artificially high. And you just burn it off. Right. We'll be back. Okay, we got to take a break. We'll be back right after this, and we'll start taking calls too. 773-763-9278. No one but me can save myself, but it's too late. Yeah. Heck of a job, Carson. Heck of a job, Giuliani. They're all going to have those nicknames. No, I'm not in LA currently. I'm away at families for the holidays, and I'm actually using my cousin's office, who's a U.S. Marshal. So. The interesting thing is they're saying that Romney would have to publicly apologize for him to get possibly Secretary of State. The reality is Romney is one of the few people that could actually clear the Senate hurdles versus, well, Joe Arpaio, I think, is going to get indicted ultimately. Mm-hmm.
1 minute.
Thank you. Yeah, well, the Electoral College meets on the 19th. That's what I was referring to in December 20th. I agree. Romney could become Secretary of State. Yeah. Sorry, just reading chat.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So, how we doing on calls, Johnny B?
Are you ready for Steve from the Gold Coast?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you are.
I fused you and Lady B together into one person because I didn't know who would be running the phones. Lady Johnny, who is it? Hey, Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. So a couple of points, and one, I'll begin on a positive note. We can take solace in the fact that, and you pointed this out, Trump can't possibly deliver on any number of promises that he's made, and his constituents are going to come to this realization. Having said that, that means that we have probably 2 years being up in terms of a desired that you're going to have to sort of guy. Despite the fact that the Republican Party right now is see an opportunity, and now that the election jeopardize your given, which he can really go. You raised a really important point in terms of what history can teach us, because in the conversation that you alluded to, and you played those recordings of Eisenhower talking to Kennedy. Here we have two men from two parties. They're political rivals, but they recognize the importance of the office of the presidency,
right.
And they recognize that their allegiance to that office, it goes beyond political boundaries and goes beyond those political lines, such that Kennedy can pick up the phone and he can talk to Eisenhower, because again, political party does not matter as much. Now, I would ask you, who is Donald Trump going to pick up the phone and call? He certainly can't call Bush Jr. The Bush family hates him.
Right.
I mean, for God's sake, who's he going to call? Bill Clinton? I mean, Barack Obama?
By his own words, he's going to call Obama, and that should be of no surprise to anyone.
And that's the only saving.
Yep.
Right, and that's the only saving grace, is that Barack Obama is an adult. That Barack Obama would put that sort of petty nonsense aside and talk to the man, and that's again says something about Barack Obama. But if Barack Obama weren't that kind of a human being, Donald Trump, who again could call no one that is alive today,
Yeah.
and that held that office because of the way he's alienated and because of the kind of politics we practice today. I mean, there was a time in the 1980s where Ronald Reagan was on one side, Tip O'Neill was on the other side, but these are men who could have a drink together.
Yes.
And after it was all said and done. Today we have a nation where people, quite frankly, hate the other side, and we can't have that discussion. And again, this is the commander-in-chief and someone who has no political experience, doesn't know the first thing, couldn't find Uzbekistan, in terms of what continent it's on, let alone where it is specifically, and holding that office. So and this is why this is scary. Who is he going to turn to? And as you've already sort of alluded to some of the appointments he's making, these people have no background in any of these fields. I mean, what in God's name does Rudy Giuliani know about foreign policy?
Or
Nothing.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus, for that matter.
Exactly. And Ben Carson has already told us, by the way, I don't know anything about running a big government agency or administering, a big bureaucrocy. Well,
so vote for me for president.
But housing and urban development, same story as the previous agency that it was suggested that you run and department that you run. How has this now changed? I mean, what, the housing and urban development is run out of some corner office, you and a secretary? No, it's a major government entity. So how is it that you weren't qualified and said that you weren't ready for that sort of thing, but now all of a sudden you're considering this? I mean, again, this is why I'm telling you that 2 years from now, this is as far as Trump goes politically, because beyond that, you're going to see his own party start to turn against him as an alternative, as alternatives pop up to run against him in the next cycle.
I completely agree. Appreciate the call. I like the reality of being doing the job. Again, I've always said that nobody wins the presidency. You get a job, and you get a job that is incredibly difficult, is effectively a pinpoint of the American electorate, and ages the person who does it like the devil has passed his hand over a flower. And
Seriously.
Yeah. Let's understand for a second, and maybe, just maybe, I was hoping, one of the things I was hoping about the Hillary Clinton presidency, were she to make it into office, was that we could go back to let, to some degree, the presidency be boring again. While it would be certainly historic that we'd have our first female president, and she would be doing some extraordinary things, we would be moving into an idea of public servant, again, as an ideal. Not because she's a woman, but because that's how Democrats tend to work anyways. And at some point, and unfortunately, this might be a ramification later after Trump either leaves, is impeached, or doesn't win in 4 years, because he's effectively setting himself up to become the Jimmy Carter of the Republicans in many ways, just in terms of, I don't know what that was about, from his constituency at a long time later, is the idea role as president. They are effectively just voting so you don't have to. That's what happens in Congress. Basically, in Congress, there are so many bills and things that have to be voted on and signed off on, is that our representative in government is effectively just that. The person who will go there and vote the way we want to vote on each thing to the best of their ability. It's not Congress is not a leadership position. Never has been. Wasn't supposed to be. It's effectively just like the Electoral College or anything. Most of us would rather have a farm bill. So go there and sign on to the farm bill. Once we started talking about congressional and to a lesser extent senatorial candidates in terms of leadership, we started abdicating not our vote in those circumstances, but our the direction of the country to it. They are even intellectual grasping of what the vote was about. Just take care of it. I don't care. I don't even know what that bill's about. I don't even know what the concept is. That just somebody with leadership skills and somebody who vaguely shares my ideals. He'll just vote how I think I should maybe vote if I bothered to care about this. I don't have time. And in a democracy, that's effectively acquiescence to the king. That's what happened when there were certain Americans who didn't want the revolution to happen. They wanted us to remain part under the imperial arm of England. They were viewed as traitors, but in many ways they were. But they were also people who were like, look, I kind of like it that the president just, that would be a king and just run stuff for us. I got bigger fish to fry, or rather smaller. And those people are still around in both political theory and emotional theory. So we got to take a break. When we come back, more of your calls. 773-763-9278. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, with 100% more Johnny Million. Let's see. All right, here we are. Okay, got 2 tweets out. We're solid. Yeah, say what you will about the Hillary Clinton voter, but they weren't. While they may not have been enamored of her, they certainly just were looking for a capable person to run the office, and felt that if she did anything like unto, was leaning towards the direction of something like unto the Iraq War, that an uprising would, of citizenry and of her own base would shift that belief system. The problem with Trump is, for a lot of his followers, is that he will follow the biggest ego boost that he gets from whoever's local. So whoever, whatever the last thing he said that puffed his ego the most will get the most attention. And it never has been the working man, and nor will it ever be. Because he's not going to be able to have his rallies like he wants to. So why would he even run into them? And therefore, if they're not in his immediate thought form, his sort of ADD mentality about stuff it's going to create a gap between the people who voted for him.
10 seconds. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. What those people think he should get, and or he will do for them, versus what he really will do for them. So, go be a bit kooky.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out on me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
So, welcome back. I'm sure we have a couple more calls in there. Do we not, Johnny B?
We got 4 more calls.
Oh, right on.
4 more calls. Johnny B.
I just felt like I said, I don't know who's doing the button. You're doing the button pushing? Are you doing the button pushing, Johnny?
I'm not. No, I'm making Lady B do
That's
it.
what I thought.
See,
that's I was like, there's this weird delay between the two of you. So that's now my fusion. Okay, who do we have?
So we've got Kurt from Cali on line 2.
Excellent. Hey, Kurt, welcome.
Kurt.
Hey, happy holidays, folks.
Thank you.
Hey, well, I'm glad to be one of the first few callers on the Million Sparks show today. you guys should double up more often.
I agree. Yes,
we try to. It's because I'm lazy.
He and I are gonna run as a team for WCPT on in some marathon and call it the Million Sparks March. But go ahead.
That'll work, man. It's got a good ring to it.
It does.
Matter of fact, we need to get a Million Sparks out on that front house, on that
White House lawn,
steps of the Capitol,
right?
Along with them million women protesting Trump. So.
Well, I'm going to be...
can't let this go down the way it is.
No, I'm going to be performing it just by happenstance. I was booked to play the Arlington Cinema Draft House on January 20th, the day after. So, and to do that, I'm going to have to fly in 2 days early, or I'm never going to be able to get into that town. So we're going to do... The show will be live from D.C. that weekend. As we officially, smash the giant bottle of champagne on the bow of the Titanic and wave to the passengers as they leave. It's going to be an extraordinary week. I'm both concerned and, as a comedian, hopeful. But go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Well, what sparked me to call, no pun intended, was that you're saying that this Trump presidency is going to be a test of Article 1, Section 9 or something like that?
Yeah.
About ingratiating oneself or sort of way?
Well, it's effectively, it is a ban on gifts, emoluments, meaning payments of any sort, favors, or any other support from kings, heads of state, or foreign countries. And currently, simply the way his business runs, that's impossible unless he sells them. Unless the trust is run by someone he does not see. It's impossible. And we all know that Dick Cheney got away with a lot of that business by divesting himself from Halliburton, knowing full well that he would just, he would still own it after the fact. The blind trust was controlling it, but he helped Halliburton while he was in office through military outreach. There's a certain limitations to the blind trust that you can certainly work around. You're not dumb. You know where your buildings are. You can certainly, be careful around those governments and help yourself out with a couple of no bid contracts, as Cheney did. But still, there was at least the on-paper legitimacy of it. Cheney didn't have his son or daughter. Liz Cheney wasn't running Halliburton while he was in office, and and he was one of the most opaque vice presidents in history. The man had two. Everybody cries foul about Hillary Clinton's private server. Dick Cheney had two human-sized safes in them. Apparently, one for documents and the other for goat blood. And in his office that nobody but him got into. Just creepy beyond measure. I'm kidding about the goat blood. That's a joke, but it wouldn't surprise anybody. The reality is, if Trump can't do that, he's in violation of that period. That's impeachable. And so anybody who raises it has grounds for impeachment. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, yeah, and that's why I'm glad you brought up Cheney, because aside from Cheney, I found it no coincidence that President Bush, a failed oil man with connections to the oil industry, I found it no coincidence that gasoline went from $1.79 a gallon in 1998 when he first started running to well over $5 a gallon by the time he left office. I found it no coincidence that Cheney and Halliburton was on the verge of bankruptcy when he elected himself as vice president. People don't remember. Bush tapped Cheney to help him find the vice president, and suddenly Cheney said, well, I guess I'm the best guy.
Mm-hmm. He installed himself. Yeah.
He picked himself.
Yep.
And I found you the answer.
Yeah. And then I found it no coincidence that half of Bush's cabinet were once part of a group called the Project for a New American Century, who stated in their mission statement that in order to jumpstart the industrial military complex, they needed a new Pearl Harbor-like scenario in order to jumpstart the
that goes back
military.
To that old PNAC document that had the towers with the rifle scope on them. That's who those.
Yep.
Absolutely. And again, this is when you have effectively crony capitalism was directly responsible for the collapse, of the Great Recession, and Trump is setting up the exact same thing. There is no drain the swamp. Peter Thiel is the only person where he can argue, I'm bringing somebody in who's fresh, who actually doesn't have and Peter Thiel is a guy who wants to hide all his money in Bitcoin and effectively declare an offshore oil rig his own country so that he never has to pay taxes. But by the way, it's within international waters, but at the edge where the soft spot where America patrols, so he can get all the benefits of being American, just never have to pay for them, which is effectively the Trump mechanic. Don't pay taxes, but you get all the intellectual property and property rights protections of the American legal system. And now he effectively has the American military at his disposal to protect sites he knows he owns, even if they're in a blind trust. That's the Halliburton version of reality. He sells his company with the idea that I will buy it back at whatever I sold it at, not what it's worth. This is the key. He'll watch for that arrangement if he does end up selling it. I will sell it to this trust, and then I'll buy it back at the exact same dollar amount, and then effectively enrich it during his presidency. Just the briefings alone you get from the CIA are worth their weight in gold to anybody who does land-based, material industry, be it oil rights, real estate, any of those elements. What the CIA tells you about how the world works and what our maneuverings will be in those countries is worth its weight in gold to anybody in that. That's why we have these protections. That's why Article 1, is Section 9 says what it says, because you'll do exactly that. You'll just pad your nest after the fact against the better needs of the country.
Yep. And here's one last thing that scares me about a Trump presidency. But it ties back to the election of Bush. On November 7th, 2000, at around 9 p.m. Pacific time, which was midnight on the East Coast. When they started finagling with the vote and went from Gore to Bush as the winner, I grabbed my mother's hand and I said, Mom, we're going to war.
Yep.
I don't know how, I don't know when, but this man, the way I had been listening to him talk the entire campaign about him being the son of a president and having so-called experience in this Coast Guard, whatever, that he was the best man to fight our enemies. And I kept saying, what enemies is he talking about? You know, other than an occasional cruise missile fired off by Bill Clinton, we had a relatively peaceful presidency. So I kept saying, what enemies is he talking about? Okay? And then all of a sudden, 9/11 happened. Suddenly, we got to go after Afghanistan. The Taliban. We got to go after Saddam Hussein. And I kept saying, well, what does Saddam Hussein have to do with Afghanistan?
Yeah, it was a Saudi hiding there, and we ended up finding. That's right. And again,
9 years later, but check it out.
Yeah.
Hold on, check this out. No one has ever asked a question. For 8 years, George Bush was shaking hands with Musharraf from Pakistan almost on a monthly basis.
Right.
And not once did he ask him, by the way, did bin Laden happen to come over into your country after we lost him in
I really don't think about him that much anymore, to be completely honest. I don't really think about him. Except every time I wink at Musharraf every time we shake hands. Absolutely. There was no way the Pakistani military and leadership didn't know he was in the country. Not possible. And
but now fast forward to Trump now. Trump, for the last 6 months, has been talking about we got to do something about these Muslims. Can't let them in the country. And then everybody he's hired, all these generals kept talking about, we need to be more tough on bombing Iran and bombing the ISIS and this and that. So I can just tell you right now, something's going to happen. If this man is allowed to get in the presidency, there's going to be another cataclysmic something that nobody can figure out how it happened, and there's going to be all these CIA warnings that Trump is going to ignore, and suddenly, after several months of not paying attention, something's going to happen. All of a sudden now, we got to go bomb Iran, or we got to go bomb ISIS. Everybody come on.
Or Israel, or effectively he tacitly gives Israel the go-ahead. And then any retaliatory act by Iran is seen as an act of war, and that's what pulls us in. And that's what the big fear has been for the last 20 years in many ways. And for all of its faults, the Bush administration and certainly the Obama administration have kept that at bay for a very long time. Now that Iran doesn't even have the illusion of maybe hiding a nuclear weapon, and that we know they only have tactical weapons, we've effectively pantsed them from a defensive position as far as their abilities, and all-out war in the Middle East could be a reality. That's exactly the biggest fear, and I think you've articulated it very well. We got to take a break. When we come back, more of your calls, 773-763-9278. Follow at JMillion on Twitter, and, of course, at Hal Sparks, and you can use the hashtag HSRPM. We'll be back. Yeah, the live stream health is fluctuating. I apologize. This thing. I'm in my cousin's office. He's a U.S. Marshal now, and he had to fly to Georgia yesterday. For the funeral of a U.S. Marshal who was shot in the chest last Friday, father of 5, killed in a raid by an assailant with a long record of violent crime, who was out and shot this man who was effectively, was in a senior enough level that he didn't need to be on the raid, and was killed in the line of duty. Went AK-47 at close range, just went straight through his heart, even though he's wearing a bulletproof vest. So my cousin is at that funeral. The wake, he said there was a 2-hour waiting line just to talk to the family. There were 4,000 people showed up, and at the wake, and he waited. The family had been on a line speaking to well-wishers and people from the U.S. Marshal Service, from the FBI, from law enforcement in the area.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Since 10 a.m. in the morning. And I mean, it's heartbreaking for them. And every time something like that happens, I think of my cousin and his family, and how, we love them so much, and like he's in danger all the time. They go to some gnarly places.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Welcome back to the show. Let's take some calls as well.
Let's do it.
Thank you, Johnny.
We got David from San Francisco on line 3.
Hey, David. Welcome.
Oh, honey. Honey, all. It's funny. Do you remember there was a book that was written probably 50 years ago, if not longer. It's called The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yeah.
And
was it Norman Vincent Peale?
So when we're thinking, I think it was. Yeah. And he wasn't that clean of a guy, if I remember right. He palled around with Richard Nixon, but the power. That book was based on a biblical phrase where every one of God's worst thoughts came to pass. Mm-hmm. And I think that was kind of like the fall of the Garden of Eden or something like that. So every one of God's worst fears came to pass. So that's when Norman Vincent Peale wrote his book. He said, well, let's try the power of positive thinking. So when we're faced with this idea of somebody like Trump, bringing in a guy like Jamie Dimon. Jamie Dimon, was he...
an adult movie star? That's a horrible name.
Jamie Dimon's...
He was one of the worst of the 2000s.
J.B. Morgan Chase. He was, a straight-up crook. If there is a better...
Crash of 2008.
Yeah, there's a better example of a bankster by Tom Hartman's phraseology. It's Jamie Dimon. Yeah.
Right, he's the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
And Trump wants to put him as the head of the Treasury.
Yeah.
I mean, whoa, this is like doubling down on evil, And so it gets
There's no draining the swamp there. That is literally the installation. Basically, here's what Donald Trump wants to do. He wants to drain the swamp to kill all the fish and trees and birds, and then release alligators into what's left. That's what he's doing. He's never you can never drain the swamp fully. So basically, he just wants to kill all the animals that provide an ecosystem for the swamp, as it were, and every bird and fish that flies, and just release pythons and alligators just by
South America.
Yeah, that's right.
And so this whole idea that what are we to do in a case like that? And now my first obvious is Jubilee, where you just cancel all the debts. This has gotten crazy. It's a poker game that's rigged. We're not going to play anymore. We're reshuffling the deck. Mm-hmm. This is not even a beginning of accuracy anymore. So why pay attention?
Right.
So, with that in mind, like with global warming, we're going to have the flooding of the coastlines. If 90% of the world's population live at coastlines, they better dismantle the cities, pull them back.
Right.
That's plenty of jobs, and the quicker it gets done, the better. Mm-hmm. So if Donald Trump doesn't believe in it, then why should we listen to Donald Trump? We should just create our own economy, screw Donald Trump's play money anymore, and start doing what's right. And, growing food again, making shoes again, pulling the shorelines back, cleaning up the shorelines so that we're going to have some clean fishing grounds once those oceans rise. You don't want rusty nails in your oyster bed. And, the idea that they're ignoring this not only at our peril, but their economics is based upon pollution. Their economics isn't based upon any kind of logical manufacture. It's based on pollution and getting it done cheap and never cleaning it up.
Right.
So, that's how Jamie Dimon made his money.
Right. And this applies to all of, because the idea is that somehow we survived the pollution of the Industrial Revolution, which was much more isolated, much more confined, and therefore by doing that, it puts to myth all the concerns about environmental impact. That cancer clusters caused by chemical companies and fuel sites, those are just it's the price of doing business. It's those are the broken eggs in the omelet. That's just how it works.
Cost.
Right. You just factor it in. And those aren't dead people. Those are just collateral. And the more human beings on the planet, the higher the percentage of collateral you're allowed. That life is so successful by creating 9 billion people that if you kill 500 million of them for industry's sake, isn't that just playing by the percentages? And we love percentages in this country. That's why that keeps us from looking at the real numbers. So,
license to kill.
That's right.
And, it's interesting. I'm old enough to remember when James Bond was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
The movies, and it was a big scandal around the country that somebody was giving a guy a license to kill.
Mm-hmm.
This one spy,
That's right.
Climbing around the world and killing people. And who's authorized to allow somebody to kill? Nobody gives that right. Nobody gives that privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that now you've got corporations that, Bhopal, they never prosecuted that guy because the U.S. government would not extradite him.
Right.
He killed thousands of people in a single night and came fleeing to America and got away with murder. They never extradited him for a mass murder like that, and that's 30 years ago.
Well, that's like
so the trend has gotten even more bizarre. So that's why Jubilee seems like a real smart idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, you certainly have effectively powerhouse economies within the United States that effectively Trump will have no real lasting impact on. Almost like you can only do pluses from a federal level. You can't really do minuses. You can't, other than the fact that, say, California, as an enormous economy, I think, Los Angeles is the 6th biggest economy in the world. Somewhere along those lines, or 8th now. But still, by itself, a population that is equal to all of Kentucky and all of Tennessee, which both of those states each have 2 senators, a number of congressional representatives, a governor, a state house. Los Angeles has none of those things. As as far as you want to talk about taxation without representation, and that the red states whine about. But the reality is California, especially Los Angeles and San Francisco, pay for Tennessee. They pay for Kentucky. All the government programs that go through there, not just the federal ones, but elements of, a variance level of National Guard where you're responsible for your own troops, but you get a certain stipend to make sure that there's no, weak links in the chain. California and New York, and to some degree Texas and Seattle now, in Washington State, pay for all that. They pay for all the red states to pretend that they're on their own. Pretend that they're bootstrappers, pretend that they're somehow not tied to Washington, D.C. And if at any point during Trump's presidency, he makes real on his concept that, we're going to start lowering these, regulations just by cutting them, it's not states like California that will get poisoned, because California has a strong structure of guaranteed protections and has gone further than the rest of the state. So and Illinois to some degree as well. Illinois, because of the importance of Chicago, has within it certain waterways that are protected works, that there's enough robust economy around it to pick up the slack that we don't necessarily need the federal government unless there's a huge emergency that swamps the entire budget. But the state itself has got enough. Well, Tennessee doesn't. South Carolina has a couple of major corporations, but they're mainly, chemical and medical and bio waste that they have to worry about. If those regulations get cut, they don't have the support regulations on a state level to do that. They don't have the, a ceiling to protect them from that fall. They feel it first. It's their coastlines that get poisoned first. It's their citizenry. It's their cancer clusters that bloom. Louisiana, Mississippi, you want brain cancer or liver cancer or kidney cancer or bowel cancer, that's you head on down there and live for a couple of years. Your chances go through the roof because those states don't care. The industry is more important. And if you have somebody like Donald Trump in or the Republicans run things and are make good on their promises that they're going to eliminate those regulations, it's the red states that are first to get poisoned. You take Obamacare out, you take the guarantee of pre-existing conditions, you got diabetes, you're done. You're pre-diabetic, you're done. Never mind the people who couldn't get cancer treatment because they had acne in high school. Those horror stories. Flat out, you got a history of diabetes in your family, good luck getting health insurance. And that's ubiquitous in red states. Bless you.
Excuse me.
That means we have to take a break. On that sneeze,
I think that
that's our cue. That's Johnny and I have a secret code that we use.
It's a secret etiquette foiling broadcast code.
That's right. Yeah, you have a cough button. There is no sneeze button, but you know the cough button has worked for
exactly. I looked around for the sneeze button. It's
there
not
isn't
around
one. It
here.
says cough. Well, I don't need to do that. Now what? And then it's too late. And then it's a sneeze and you're done. We'll be back. We're already way over the break. We'll take a break right now. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. Follow J Million, #sneeze on Twitter. We'll be back.
That'd be great.
Yeah. #bless you. Mm-hmm. Johnny's the king of sneeze and wheeze.
1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
Johnny, what is he saying at the first line of that? Is it limping as you do?
Yeah, I believe that's what it is.
Yeah. I
limping
remember as a
you
kid.
do, and I think it's
as
like
you do, and I'm watching you. Because it's
like
about
he's criticizing somebody who's wasted or something.
Yeah, he's making fun of Blue Oyster Cult. I think the guys in Blue Oyster Cult who opened for they opened for Kiss opened for Blue Oyster Cult one year, and then the next year Blue Oyster Cult opened for Kiss.
Can you imagine how that would feel? Just on either side.
Sure, it's pretty. I mean,
being nice to people on the way up or down.
Oh yeah, and so he wrote that song basically because they were wasted or something like that, and I'm watching you the whole time. And at the end of the song, they say, and everybody else is here watching us. So it had reversed in that year. By the way, I'm about to hashtag HSRPM on this and send this out, but it is Small Business Saturday following Black Friday.
Yeah, it is.
And leading up to Cyber Monday, which in Small Business Saturdays where you try to, if you're going to buy Christmas gifts and you didn't just, get a bloody nose at the big chain stores buying, to quote Mark Wahlberg's character in Pain and Gain, a bunch of China crap. You actually
wow, I never saw Pain and Gain. Is
really?
that worth it?
Oh my God. It's a true story, It's a true story about these guys who come up with a plan to kidnap a man who they think is rich.
Maybe I did. Doesn't somebody just get gravely injured?
Oh yeah. Well, there's one point in the movie, because it's a true story, where they remind you that it's a true story by putting "still a true story" across the screen because you wouldn't believe it. And it's the scene where The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, is barbecuing the hands of the victim. They've cut his hands off. They told him to burn the fingerprints off, so he took them out and he's using barbecue tongs on a barbecue in the front yard.
Holy moly!
It's insane, and it's a true story. It's one of those things where you're like, why am I laughing at this? This is horrific, but it's true because it's just so nuts. But anyways, it is Small Business Saturday, and the idea is that you try to shop for your Christmas gifts at small shops, owned by, individuals as opposed to big chain stores. And the other thing too is one of the ways to do it is kind of a version of Cyber Monday today. If you go, I don't know, I'm not quite sure if the places near me have it, the small, mom and pops. So one of the ways to do that, I think, is Etsy. This is not a sales pitch, but Etsy is one of those things where a lot of people make their own stuff and sell it online from, handcrafted clothes and that kind of stuff. That's a good way to do your Small Business Saturday version of Cyber Monday. That's just my own personal theory and plug, just throwing that out there. Anyways,
I think I accidentally do a lot of small business stuff just because it's what appeals to me. I've got a Kemper Profiler, and they're a bunch of small independent folks who make better amp profiles than all the giant ones sponsored by Kemper.
Sure. Yeah, the great thing about if you have a musician in your what was the name of the guitar shop we went to in Chicago where I met you at the one that's it's totally like Chicago.
Oh, on Damon?
Yeah.
Rock and Roll Relics, I think.
Yeah, they have a lot of handmade pedals and that kind of stuff. If you have a guitar player in your your family, you may not know what they like to play, but no guitar player who's serious about it would mind a handmade pedal of any sort.
No.
You know what I mean? It's
There's
really
no way to
cool.
lose. Yeah, any kind of pedal.
any pedal where you go, oh, I'm going to go here, and this was hate. It's got a bunny. They're even if you never use appreciate those kind of things. Let's take another time, and I want to make sure everybody gets.
Paul in Chicago on line 5. Oops, he went to Paul from the Northwest Chicago on line 2. Sorry, Paul from Chicago.
There you go. Welcome.
Like Paul from Seattle. I'm the Paul that isn't 2,000 miles away.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway,
we'll get you guys in the same room eventually, but as of now, I think you're both the same person. It's a Superman Clark Kent thing. But go ahead.
I think they're the same person.
Right.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm going to go into a phone booth and change into Superman after we talk. But the reason I called is because, Hal, last week you were recommending finding a different nomenclature for the term popular vote. And mine of choice is the direct vote.
Okay.
Because the people vote directly for the candidate of their choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what. Have you ever heard of the National Popular Vote Pact?
Yes. We spoke about that a little bit
in
the episode that week a little bit. But there's, tell everybody about it, though, from your perspective. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's a way of, having the popular vote count without actually changing the Constitution. All 50 states have agreed to, whichever one's enacted into law can use the direct vote total rather than whatever their own electoral college vote was. All they have to do is enact it into law, and as soon as there are 270 or more of them who do it, we've got a direct vote electing the president. And so thus far, there are 11 states and 165 electoral vote equivalents towards that end. So we got to get some more ratification out there for if it's going to happen.
And interestingly enough, it won't it'll be hard to convince the red states in particular to do it. Because they have everything to lose.
They're not good. I agree with you there. I hate not to wish a president well, but if Trump tanks horribly, it's a very strong argument for both sides of the aisle of the Electoral College.
Mm-hmm. It will also, I think it will really take, honestly, I think it will take a Republican losing the Electoral College and winning the popular vote for them to really think about it. And I don't see that happening ever because they have a real issue with the national, what I call the national vote going their way. And if you'll notice on that on the website, I'm gonna tweet that out. I had you describe it so I could look up the site and tweet it out. But they call it the national popular vote. Yeah, and the national part, we'll watch for that to work its way in over the next couple of years, calling it the national vote instead of the popular vote.
Hopefully in enough places that it can carry the weight.
That's right. And
anyway, it was nice visiting with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. And we will see you, I'm sure, in the future if Paul is the other one isn't calling in, because obviously it would tear the space-time continuum.
Right, they can't be in the same room.
That's right. Yeah, it's like Time Cop. Matter can't occupy the same space. Yeah, but 10 years apart, nobody has the same matter in their body rats. Anyways, I so nerded and yelled in that movie. Don't get me started.
Really?
Yeah, they were saying you couldn't touch your past self because you would turn into this time-space blob and be torn to pieces because matter can't occupy the same space. But because of the cell turnover in our own bodies, you're not made up of the same matter in 10 years.
Yeah, true.
At all. Not a cell in your body is the same cell from 10 years ago. I think the cellular turnover in the human body is 7 years. 7 years, every cell in your body has been replaced. It only does it in patterns.
That explains a lot.
Yeah. Why every year I feel like every 7 years I feel like a new 7-year-old mentally.
Uh-huh.
But what that for? Anyway, so that it's complete nonsense. It's that in and of itself is a ridiculous concept, and I just Like, I was so enjoying the movie until they made that point and I'm like, this is going to be pivotal. These people are idiots. Oh, no. Not a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie that doesn't stand up to scrutiny. What is the world coming to? You know. So we have to take a break. When we come back, it'll be time for the happy ending. I think we have one more caller, so we'll get one more caller when we come back.
And we got a couple more.
All right,
two
good.
more.
All right, we'll get if we can get both of them in, awesome. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks Radio Program, Mega Worldwide, with Johnny Million. There's some argument right now that we're in the midst of the Mandela effect, which I find hilarious, but interesting. I'm going Sheldon again. I'm worse than Sheldon. Like, it gets bad sometimes. When I start arguing, literally, like, I enjoyed Deadpool so much, but there is no reason why the villain in that isn't basically the same as the villain in The World Is Not Enough, the Bond film. Like, just because you don't feel any pain doesn't make you any stronger. It actually makes you more susceptible to death because you don't know you're injured and therefore don't treat it, and you become septic and die. And so the villain in that was like, I have faster reflexes and I don't feel pain. That's dumb. Didn't keep you from getting... Yeah. Again, I will just... That's right. Sneezing is just getting extra cells out of your body, clearing you out. Swede Mom on eBay. That's awesome. Well, thanks, Ellie. Is there a Twitter handle for it or anything like that? For Swede Mom? There it is. Swede Mom. Who was a top seller online, known for unique items and collectibles?
30 seconds.
Yeah, is that at SwedeMom, SwedeMom.com? What's your small business, EO? Oh.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks Radio Program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
In our chat room, by the way, this leans in the happy ending version. Ellie has mentioned a shopping channel, I guess you would call it, on eBay called Swede Mom, SWEDEMOM, Swede Mom, and 100% of the sales go to help support and house over 300 homeless men and women and children in Chicago at a shelter, CCO. So Swede Mom is one of is a possible for your small business Saturday,
for
holiday
all
purchase.
Your shopping needs.
That's right, for anything that really kind of comes up. So I'm gonna tweet that out right now, and we'll take another call.
All right, this is the real Paul.
Mm-hmm.
The 815 kind of Paul.
Sure it is. Hi.
Hey,
Welcome.
You there?
Yeah,
we are now.
Ahead.
Hey, so Hal, I was listening to you talk about the electoral college thing, but my biggest concern about the Trump presidency. All right, so let's say first thing he does is go after this TPP agreement and everything like that. My biggest fear is that he gets a big approval rating, not only from the Republican constituents, but a lot of the Democrats as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they impeach him and Pence becomes president, I think Paul Ryan steps up to vice president, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yep. Here's the other
I
thing.
think you're right.
I think he may get a bump from shutting down the TPP, but if you'll notice, he left the door open in his statement to negotiate another, effectively the same policy. And if they look at the paperwork, as much bad press as TPP has gotten, the reality is the Obama administration worked very hard to try and mitigate any damage to American workers and to try to, do things. Let us remember that whenever a Democrat tries to throw in a America or it's the Republican corporate reason. It is an absurd. Trump's ties are still made now. There was no right after the election, I'm changing my tune, we're going to make America great again, and I'm going to start. None of that. His stuff, all that watch for Chinese American flags all over the place during the inauguration. There's no sense that being made in America means anything. He said, we're going to look at shale oil and coal again or whatever. They're not going to do anything to bring those back. Mitch McConnell said as much. That those jobs aren't going any, nobody can do anything about bringing those back. The American energy system is shifting away from it permanently, as is the world. There's no way we're going to be selling coal to China. It's an absurdity. So those jobs aren't coming back. And at what point do those people who were promised those recognize that what Hillary Clinton was saying was, yeah, those jobs aren't coming back. We got to find ways to gainfully employ these people. We got to find new industries, new ways, because the coal mines are going away. And instead of being said, no, I want to go back to working in a coal mine. Well, there aren't going to be any. So you bought the snake oil hook, line, and sinker. That's as much as he might get a bump from getting rid of TPP. I got news for you. The reversal on him once none of this stuff starts coming to fruition. The irony is all of his biggest wins are going to be Democratic largely, with the exception of possibly a Supreme Court nominee that he tries to push through, even, that the right wing, that the Heritage Club hands him. That's the only area where the right's really going to clamor for what he's doing. There's not going to be a wall. Mexico's not going to pay for it. It's not going to happen. And the only way to do the infrastructure bill he wants to do is make an infrastructure bank. He's not, and the Republicans are the ones who are against that. That was in Hillary's platform. It's been around, and both sides, by the way, it's another one of those things where it's a bipartisan thing. If you actually put the vote up for an infrastructure bank, it would go through. The only thing that has bipartisan support currently in a lot of these offices is either bills written by Republicans in the late 80s that have languished because Tip O'Neill and, in the Reagan house worked on the merits and they've just floated in limbo in committee forever, or bills that Democrats put forward to kind of mitigate what they want and what the Republicans want to create a genuine balance. And they've been sitting there because Paul Ryan knows that if they come up for a vote, it will be seen as a win for the Democrats. And now the only way that they'll actually get is if Trump gets to stamp his name on it. And the Democrats will vote for it because it's their bill. They don't have the problem of, Romney care versus Obamacare, just as long as it gets done. It's the Republicans who
Right.
believe that we can never give the other side a win. Because the reality is, the minute he gets that win, all of his base, the psychos that you think will be celebrating, hate all that stuff. They hate Medicare expansion. They hate any kind of, comprehensive immigration reform. And that's the only way he's going to get, those things logged in, as those things, for the same reason that left-wing purists hate a lot of the bills and things that they hate Obamacare for those reasons, not recognizing that the 80% of it is saving lives all the time, and 20% of it can be managed and changed over time to be more beneficial. That it's. Whew, I have a quote that I want to read that I've been studying quite a bit lately. In these introspective moments following the election. And this is from a guy named Albert Pike. This book, I think, was written in 1912. But he said, a democratic government undoubtedly has its defects because it is made and administered by men and not by wise gods. It cannot be concise and sharp like the despotic. When its ire is aroused, it develops its latent strength, and the sturdiest rebel trembles. But its habitual domestic rule is tolerant, patient, and indecisive. Men are brought together first to differ, then to agree. Affirmation, negation, discussion, solution. These are the means of attaining truth. Often the enemy will be at the gates before the babble of the disturbers is drowned in the chorus of consent. In the legislative office, deliberation will often defeat decision. Liberty can play the fool like the tyrants. This is... Hold on, my son came in. It's nearing the happy ending, so he came in to give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. Say, come on, man. That specific governing that men are brought to for then. This is the order. That once you have one party or the other simply running blockade, abstinence of governing out of a vindictive idea of what governing is for, you undermine the democratic process. And if America is anything, it is a democratic republic. And if you run interference with the process of governance through voting, that is un-American. There is, for all this crying of voter fraud and all this nonsense about people voting twice, our problem in this country are those who do not vote at all, or those specifically who are not allowed to vote. We need more than anything in this country a ratified constitutional amendment that guarantees the right to vote of every adult who has not abdicated that responsibility through crime specific to the act of voting. You commit voter fraud, you can't vote anymore. But you go to jail, you pay your debt to society, you get out, you can vote again. Because you have to have skin in the game that is America. But everyone else must at all times have the ability, if they are legally allowed to vote. Period. And I think it should be tied to your Social Security number. It is at the age of 18, since everyone has a Social Security number at birth, it's known when you turn 18. So it should simply be that, not your address. That can be aligned to your local congressional.
And you get fingerprinted at the same time.
And chipped. Now you're getting all Alex Jones on me. By the way, here's our happy ending real quick because I don't have a lot of time. We're going to tweet out the Swede Mom thing on my with hashtag HSRPM if you want to check it out for Sparta Small Biz. What?
When you said on my, I thought you were struggling for the word Twitter.
No, I was on my HSRPM tag. I know what I'm doing. Okay, so here it is. Here's the happy ending.
That's my happy ending.
Alex Jones and Breitbart have complained that there's some, that the Pentavalent runs the world, that somewhere between lizard people and the 5 controlling families, they control the earth right now, and that that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are part of this mechanic, and that that this is what guarantees it. Now that Trump is in charge, all their arguments fall apart. Alex Jones is now the man. Understand that. Alex Jones is now every bit Bill O'Reilly. He is mainstream media now. And so his complaints that somehow...
Now where am I going to buy my dick pills?
Right, exactly. I guess you're going to have to go to MSNBC. They're going to have to start selling them because it'll invert, right, somehow, on the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell.
Right.
There you go. I don't know if you're allowed to say that on the air, but it happened. So here we go.
Well, it happened.
Dick anyways,
Nixon, great president.
Know that the bright part is that these guys can no longer complain that somehow the system is against them because they are the system. And now they have to live up to that governing. And they can't. We'll see you next time. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Press Talk. Thank you so much, Lady B. Thank you, Johnny. And we will see you guys next time. All right. Follow at Johnny Million. Follow at Hal Sparks. We'll see you. Okay. At Gmail. You got it. I'm cramming it all in. Go tell somebody about the show. Oh, go tell someone. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Lady B. Love you. Have a great holiday. Hope your Thanksgiving was terrific. They got people coming in the studio and yeah.
You know I mixed all that up, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have a great weekend.
Did you scramble for the button on dick pills? Is that what you were?
Yeah.
So everything at the last minute was just yeah. Well, holiday. Much love to you, and we will. I'll see you very soon.
All right.
Okay. There we go. Just. Oh yeah. Oh, totally. Nice one, Rocky Mountain Mike. That was beautiful. Here's the, there's a lot of reasons people don't vote. The primary one is there is a margin of human beings who are pivotal to an election who are currently not being allowed to vote, either through limitations of voting machines, lack of availability, perhaps some level of their ballots being chucked out, that kind of stuff. There needs to be what's effectively an expansion of the secure data infrastructure where we can vote at your local what have you, but they have to have a link up from their machines to the federal government, and after the fact they must be able to check the machines against that each time, when it's done. When the vote is tallied, it will be checked against the federal number that's been tabulated in the computers there, and that way states and that's right, or that's right, when you try to do it through the mail or absentee and they're messing with you. Australia's is mandatory. You get fined, or you have to write a letter why you're not voting. Albert Pike. It's from a book called that quote was from Albert Pike. It's from a book called Morals and Dogma, which is actually about it's effectively the philosophical Bible of Freemasonry. It is, and it's written from the presentation of the thought forms that led George Washington and Ben Franklin and those guys to be Freemasons. And I was reading it, and I was sort of overwhelmed by the number of quotes in it that either just lightning rod was impressive. This is another quote. I didn't read this one on the show, but in a free country, human speech must needs be free, and the state must listen to the meanderings of folly and the screeches of its geese and the braying of its asses, as well as the golden oracles of its wise and great men. This is before, the Larry Flynt, basically hustler argument that you have to allow the worst of speech to protect true. This one was like Obama or Hillary and versus the Trump impact. If genius, armed with learning and knowledge, will grasp the reins, the people will reverence it. If it only modestly offers itself for office, it will be smitten on the face, even when, in the straits of distress and the agonies of calamity, it is indispensable to the salvation of the state. Put it upon the track with the showy and the superficial, the conceited, the arrogant, impudent, the trickster, and the charlatan, and the results will be not a moment doubtful. The verdicts of legislators and people are like verdicts of juries, sometimes right by accident, meaning that you have to understand that people will lean towards the showy and the charlatan, and you have to adorn truth with it, or the people will ignore it as weak. Let a republic begin as it may, it will not be out of its minority before imbecility be promoted to high places, and shallow pretense, getting itself puffed into notice, will invade all sanctuaries. The most unscrupulous partisanship will prevail, even in respect to judicial trusts, and the most unjust appointments constantly be made, although every improper promotion not merely confers one undeserved favor, but may make 100 honest cheeks smart with injustice. Yeah. This, and that's just from, like, that's chapter 2. I learned to speed read a little bit ago, but this one I was taking so many notes it slowed down everything. That's right. The best part about this thing was like, he speaks with such like honorable dialogue in what he's discussing that it almost seems so dignified as to go, well, as a comedian, what part do I have to play in this? Because my job in many ways is to use humor as, you know, as a cudgel, as a weapon, as a chisel to make the country better, in my estimation, when I'm doing stand-up and stuff. It's a little, when you get, you know, too almost religious in thought about it. And then he says at one point, let history and satire punish the pretender as they crucify the despot. The revenges of the intellect are terrible and just. And he says, a silly song did, and this one's for you, Rocky, James by Albert Pike. A silly song did more to unseat James II than the acquittal of the bishops. Let history and satire punish the pretender as they crucify the despot. The revenges of the intellect are terrible and just. Wow, it's nice. This is interesting too, when we talk about in the age of the celebrity, presidency. Less glory is more liberty. When the drum is silent, reason sometimes speaks. Yeah, I mean, there's so much good stuff in this. Like this. Remember that it is eccentric enough to ask unanimity from a jury, but to ask it from any large number of men at any point of political faith is amazing. Meaning crazy by the Old English terms that he was using. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, a book club is not a bad idea. This is a tome. Morals and Dogma, many people, even I think at the high orders of Freemasonry, can't find people who've read that book, even though it's said to be primacy. But it has a lot of the reason I'm reading it is it has a lot of the elements that Franklin and Washington and a lot of those guys lived by. It's almost the equivalent of Poor Richard's Almanac and those kind of books. It was inspired in much the same way. It came later, but a bit chewy for an album name. That's right. Some people think they had enough of silly love songs. Yeah, you can get it for a Kindle for free. Yeah, because it's not a, it's in public domain, that book. Yeah, but a video club isn't a bad idea. He wants some and hi Rosepta, I didn't see that you joined us as well later on there. I have, let's see, I've read a bunch of books in the last little bit. And like I said, I'm on Morals and Dogma. The only thing that's keeping me from reading it a lot faster, besides that I keep taking notes, I keep stopping to copy it and like, oh, that's good. And just like putting it in my notes section. Because when you use the iBooks, you can grab chunks of it and it gives you all the necessary stuff. And of course, Dr. Seuss's sleep book, which is necessary there. Just recently reread War and Peace. I'm like The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky is in my kitsch. It's kind of up next. Yeah. Here's this is true. Okay. Oh, okay. Let me tell you something real quick about my cousin. So my cousin, who's a U.S. Marshal, who I love, he and I have we differ on the political spectrum sometimes because he is clearly, I think, more cut from a more, let's say, conservative cloth than I, simply because he deals in law enforcement, and he, his experiential life is much more rigid because of that. Let's just say it that way. And to his credit, in spite of that, he's, if not open-minded about certain things, more open-hearted, let's say, about stuff. But one thing that we do share, and I gave him for his birthday was yesterday, and he wasn't here because he had to leave for the funeral, so we got to have Thanksgiving together and hang out and have kind of like an early birthday on Thursday after Thanksgiving dinner, and he and I share this desire for personal growth. Between the two of us, one of the things we probably talk the most about is how many Tony Robbins books we own, how many Zig Ziglar lectures we've listened to, how much Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, all those kind of elements. And yeah, he's an adult conservative. He's just, tempered by the fact that he goes through experiences like he's going to today, which is to go see the family of 5 that this police officer left behind when he was shot in the chest and killed a week ago. Like that, just gone, and a reality he deals with every day and has for years. And to 519 Punkin, who's saying, do you think Trump would hire himself to work in Trump businesses, the same resume he provided to U.S. voters? Absolutely not. I think he wouldn't hire himself if he met himself. But so anyways, one of the books that I was on his desk when I came into work in his office was this one, which is the Motivation Manifesto, which is a book by Brendan Burchard. And Brendan's got a ton. You don't have to read the book necessarily yet. He's got a ton of videos online. His name is spelled Burchard, Burchard. I found this one kind of to be a little harder to digest than some, because he's trying to write a classic on purpose, which is great. It's what you strive for. But it's a solid book, and his videos are very solid. Brendan Burchard is a lovely human being. And so that becomes one of our sharing points, my cousin and I. And there you go, Astro, music man. This the irony of what Trump plays at, this self-made man idea, other people have actually done, and I think Anthony Robbins is a great example of that. There's some, terrific people doing that stuff. And I think even if you walk away with one sentence that kind of shifts you, all the better. And so what I did was I ended up, in the process of doing one of these things, I was like, I have so many books I want to read. And so I learned to speed read, and I read fiction for enjoyment. I slow down and read that. But if I'm reading something for education purposes or to learn, I use, speed reading technique to do that. which is something pretty much any of you can learn to at least double your reading speed on stuff. Which, if you're not familiar, the primary one is to use run your. And this is it should get you started right away. Most people read slowly because they're reading it out loud in their head, and so they're just reading as fast as they can talk. Essentially, when you can read way faster than that because your brain can operate faster. And the other thing is because they jump back read. They read and then they double back. Your brain just automatically does it because you think you didn't see what you just saw because there's so many words on the page. To avoid the jumble, your brain does the jump back. So what you do is you just trace as you read with your fingers as you read. So make sure that you're tracking your eye to the tip of your finger and just running like that. You ever see a speed reader? They're just zipping like this. Some of them do it whole pages. It's kind of nuts. The fastest reader in the world is like 80,000 words a minute or something. He's doing whole pages, swiping the letters into his brain, and it works. The guy taught a class on Photoshop and had never used it because he sped read 8 books in 2 hours or something and taught it better than most. So, anyways, that's the primary one. If you're reading something and you really want to comprehend it, you want to read it faster, you just zip through like that, running your fingers along the page. And then as you get better at it, you move in one word and start using your peripheral vision to watch the insides. So you're really only running your finger back across the middle of it because your eye is picking up these outer parts. So you just run your finger across from the second word in on both sides. So that'll speed your finger up and get you up into the super speed. So yeah, so those are the two to just start. If you feel like starting that, I'm curious to what your experience will be. There's plenty of videos online about how to do it. There's courses on how to do it if you want to learn. But it's super. Well, that's the thing, Rocky Mountain Mike. That's why you trace it with your fingers because it keeps you on track to do that. So what happens is you read it and your brain's reading it slowly and it's kind of getting a fuzzy top. It's why people from Asian countries are better at math right away than people from English-speaking countries, is because there's less colloquial words in Asian languages about numbers. In Chinese language, the way they write 40 is 4 and the number for 10. So they go 4 tens. That's how you know what you're saying. You say 4 tens. That your brain automatically grasps. We create a colloquialism, 40. And 40 is its own variant word. It enters a new word into your understanding. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then 11 is a brand new word. No relation to the 1 and the 10 you heard before. 12, same way. 13, 14, 15. All of those through the teens and then into 20. We twist it. They go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And once they get to 10, they go 10 and 1, 10 and 2, 10 and 3, 10 and 4, 10 and 5, 10 and 6. Like that. And then when they get to 20, they go 2 tens and 1. 3. It's almost like Roman numerals, and it's way faster. So when they're doing math, it's super easy because your brain just is much more comfortable. It's not throwing these kind of Irishy sounding words. 40, 50, 60, 70. Every time you come in, it's a new set of words. So there you go. Hey, what you do is you just speed watch. I watch monster truck pulls double time, and I only slow it down when my favorite truck is there. It's like I fast forward through porn. It's the same thing. No dialogue. Yeah, you can. Drift Glass, you can't do. Unfortunately, when you're doing iBooks, this is why I've been buying a lot more physical books lately. Is that when you're skimming on that, you can't touch the screen. So it will. If you skim the screen on a book. In iBooks, eventually, you'll just you can, on some cases, every so often you'll tap the page, like that. But if you touch it and hold it, you'll do that. But if you just keep it, if you do the middle version on an iPad and don't go too far to the edges, you can actually do that. You understand? So if you do the full version of for speed reading, you'll and yeah, this is Winnie the Pooh. If you do if you go too far, it will turn the pages. But if you stay in the middle and just do this, if you've already advanced to the staying inside one word, you can speed read on an iPad. So there you go. And this is it, and this is how I read Winnie the Pooh to Camden. You want to hear the voice? This is the voice I use when I read to Camden. Here is Edward Bear coming downstairs now, bump, bump, bump on the back of his head, behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs. But sometimes he feels that there really is another way. And with this microphone, it sounds like I'm Liam Neeson. But it's much warmer when I'm saying, if only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. And then he feels perhaps there isn't. Anyhow, here he is at the bottom and ready to be introduced to you, Winnie the Pooh. So my Winnie the Pooh voice is, I'm a little bit worried. It's a little bit brack. That buzzing noise means something. You don't get a buzzing noise like that, just buzzing and buzzing without it meaning something. And if there's a buzzing noise, somebody's making a buzzing noise. And the only reason for making a buzzing noise that I know of is because you're a bee. These are the voices I make whenever you... Well, that's exactly it, Jennifer. There's going to have to be a trade deal. The problem is because of NAFTA, trade deals got a bad rap, and because of the southern states specifically, and the influx of, that somehow factory jobs are tradable for migrant worker jobs. That was one of the hyper right-wing elements of NAFTA that got through, and so we traded. We'll let some factories go down there, and you guys can work in factories of American companies down there, and in turn, your migrant workers can come up here in masses and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a little bit like this. Yeah, I'm reading the. It sounds a little bit Forrest Gumpy. I guess I could do that if I wanted to. Bad for size. So typically gets ratified by 3/4 states. Yeah. So, anyways, so that's that little bit. If you want to try speed reading, that's one of the ways to do it. I recommend it. There's a Canadian rock band called Edward Bear. That's awesome. And his name is Winnie the Pooh, T-H-E-R, the way the kid sees it. And when he says, no, he's called Winnie the Pooh, his grandfather, who's reading the story, pretends not, or because he doesn't. Family Day. Yes, he is leaning back towards Rudy for Attorney General, and that's because Secretary is not going to happen. Although it's really hard for him to do it because, again, the upside is these people have to be vetted in front of Congress. It's actually super important. That these guys are going to get raked over the coals by both anti-Trump Republicans and Democrats who are like, okay, good. This is the time we get to get Rudy Giuliani on record. Yes, that's right. We got to go. And he's eating up a storm, so he's totally good. Anyways, you guys are awesome. Love you. Thank you for joining me each week. It really means a lot. I love it. For those of you that join later or watch this as part of a stream and all that stuff, I really appreciate that too. If you can't join in the chat when you're with us. But don't forget to like and subscribe and share the show because it really helps us out. We got to hit that 10,000 person mark, and and you guys have a wonderful day. This is my last day at the Relatives before I head back to LA. Then I'm in Kentucky next week. I'm at Comedy Off Broadway for anybody in the Kentucky area, and I've got a show Wednesday night in Tennessee, and then the week after that I'm in Buffalo, New York. So if any of you are that way, and I'm very much thinking about Absolutely, Mark. My pleasure. Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, Ginger. Thanks, Reggae Mountain Mike. Thanks, 519 Punkin. Fancy Free, Integral Destiny, EO, all you guys. Jennifer, absolutely. And I'll be when I'm in Buffalo, I'm hell bent on finally in my rental car driving up to Toronto, because it's not that far a drive, and doing a little live stream from a couple of QAF locations, that kind of thing, or doing a Periscope from a couple of QAF locations, which would be kind of great. But anyways, you guys take care of yourselves. Much love, and we will see you next time. All right.